So my name is Mika Herbertson. I thought I would do my presentation a little bit different, so I'm just going to share my screen and then do it like that. Okay, cool. Um, so my essay was about whether the criminal justice system treated males and females the same. As we know, gender plays an important role in our society and continues to do that within the justice system. So from my research, I found that there were a few areas that were quite interesting. The first one was the difference between offending, sentencing, and prison for men and women. The second was the paternalism of chivalry, which is a factor that could potentially cause women to be in favour. Another thing I found interesting was the social control arguments and how they play a role. And lastly, the feminist explanation that goes into detail about why women may be treated better in the criminal justice system. So for my first point, I found interesting that all three processes which are offending, sentencing and prison, all tend to favour the women. Although I really felt like I knew that men committed more crimes than women, I was surprised that research showed men will tend to commit crimes 5 to 10 times more likely than women. This is a very large statistic and shows that work does need to be done. When it comes to sentencing, I found interesting that the magistrate had a view about genders in the criminal justice system. From my research, I found that magistrates tend to see defendants as either troubled or troublesome. For them, they view troubled defendants as people who feel the need to commit crimes to help themselves or others, and that troublesome defendants are people who commit crimes just for the sake of it or just want to do it for themselves. From the gatherings the magistrate discovered, they found that women were considered to be troubled as they would commit crimes to help more of their family, whereas men would be considered troublesome. I found this perspective by the magistrate quite different and unusual, yet though it also seemed quite accurate and why women may be treated differently. As for prison, I found it interesting that women weren't in prison for as long as men, and this may be due to criminal records and convictions and not previously offending. For men, they tend to commit crimes more than once, and therefore their prison rate tends to be a lot higher. My second point was paternalism, which is a concept that aims to treat women different to protect them from the stigma of harsh prison life or criminal record. After doing my research on this, I realised I've never heard of this concept before. The factor has been put in place since 1950 and was done so because people always thought that women were considered the weaker gender and need to be protected. There's also that stigma that, they need to be protected as they cannot look after themselves. I found this theory quite fascinating and can understand why this factor could be in place and therefore why women are treated potentially not as harsh. My next point I found interesting was the social control arguments, that theory, and it suggests why women are treated differently to men. This theory looks at beliefs that people with close ties to others will tend to display a higher level of informal social control. From this research indicated women tend to have closer ties with family due to being a mother and having children. This means that they tend to rely on their family a lot more and therefore have a high informal social control level, meaning they're more likely to not reoffend or even commit crimes. My last point I wanted to address was the feminist explanation theory. This theory does make a lot of sense to me. I think that's because I am a female. I can understand where they come from. From the research, it was identified that sentencing for men and women is primarily due to the dependence of children. Because most women are considered the main primary caregivers for children, the courts will tend to give women defendants a lesser sentence compared to men, sometimes not even a sentence at all. The research by Daly also mentioned that work and family situations were constantly the reasons for sentencing outcomes, and due to these main reasons, women were less likely to go to jail because they relied on these things in their life. Although most of my essay did show that men were treated worse than men when it comes worse than women when it comes to the criminal justice system. Research out there also shows that gender isn't the only reason. What changes decisions in sentencing and offending is also to do with the age, the crime committed, and whether you've previously committed a crime. And yeah, even Justice Wright, who was a Tasmanian Supreme Court, stated that in society striving for and largely achieving sexual equality, no legitimate distinction can or should be drawn between offenders solely based on gender. And I think that's really important because I wanted to highlight at the end of this that although, yes, gender does play a role to an extent, there are also many other factors. And that's it. Thank you, and I hope you enjoyed it.